Tonight, tributes to Tina Turner, the queen of rock and roll. Her voice ruled the charts. Her resilience inspired generations. Her music still moves.
Tina Turner, to me, as an artist, represents possibility, strength, courage, wisdom.
Florida's governor officially sets his eyes on winning the White House, but first, beating Donald Trump for the Republican nomination.
I'm running for president to lead our great American comeback.
And Michael J. Fox, intimate, in-depth, and in conversation with the National.
You know, you and I have a couple of things in common. We're both Canadian. The other thing we share in common, of course, is Parkinson.
How he hid his diagnosis for years, and his determination now to keep living with it.
This is The National with Chief Correspondent Adrian Arsenault.
Well, fans all over the world are mourning a music icon tonight, the one and only Tina Turner. Those unmistakable, powerful vocals made her a star. She made that look, that sound, her signature, fueling a decades-long career. Turner died at home in Switzerland today after a long illness. Eli Glasner starts us off tonight with the life and legacy of a legend.
In the world of rock and roll, Tina Turner was and will forever be royalty. A singer with power, presence, and the pipes. Behind the icon is a life that started in Tennessee cotton fields. The daughter of sharecroppers, she met her husband in St. Louis. Soon they were touring as the Ike and Tina Turner Revue. It was Ike's band, but Tina was undoubtedly the star, especially on the smash hit River Deep, Mountain High. But what the world didn't yet know, Tina was trapped in an abusive marriage. Her drug-addicted husband would beat her. She channeled her feelings of fear and frustration into her songs.
Hiding all of that ugliness that was in her private life, and then finding a release on stage and getting there and just blurting it all out.
The abuse continued until 1976 when they divorced.
You must understand.
Then in 1984, the album Private Dancer launched the second phase of her career.
What's love but a second-hand emotion?
At the age of 44, she blasted up the Billboard chart with her first #1 hit. With the hair, the miniskirt, and a sound all her own, she won over a new generation of fans.
Tina Turner, to me, as an artist, represents possibility, represents resilience.
Julie Black remembers seeing her music videos in the mid-'80s.
So vivid in my mind, remembering her legs, hearing that her legs were insured. But really, to be open, realizing that, you know, her renaissance, her passion for music, that she was willing to sing at any motel. Like, just put me on a stage.
That's what she and so many connected with, the performer who persevered, giving all of herself with every song. Eli Glasner, CBC News, Toronto.
As you'd imagine, personal tributes are pouring in from all over the world tonight. You just heard a bit of Tina Turner's hit, What's Love Got to Do With It? As Renee Filipponi shows us, for her fans, everything.
That's my favorite hair.
It's been a heartbreaking day for this Tina Turner tribute artist.
It couldn't be true. Can't be true. I don't want her to go.
For nearly 3 decades, Louisa Marshall has devoted her life to Tina and says it's not just her music that's an inspiration.
She actually inspired women to be strong, women to be fierce. And her rock and roll persona is just super amazing.
That legacy drove fans to visit Turner's star on the Walk of Fame in Hollywood and to remember her as simply the best.
We love Tina Turner, the greatest legs, the best voice, and all the moves that you can get.
Internationally, her death is being marked with her songs played at the red carpet in Cannes. And she brought her best to St. John's in the 80s, where she kicked off her world tour and Turner Fever hit Canada.
And the quiet is like very sort of meditating state of feel of it.
Excited fans lined up for days to get a chance to see her.
But Tina Turner's worth it.
I'd do anything for Tina.
Canadian rock icon Bryan Adams joined her on stage during that tour and recorded a duet with her.
And it changed everything for me as a solo performer. It really opened up everything, and I will never, ever be able to articulate how grateful I am to her for that.
Marshall may have only met Turner once, briefly, but says her legacy will live on.
I just feel that Tina is still within me.
And for so many, alive forever in her music. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, Vancouver.
Another tribute tonight from former U.S. President Barack Obama. He wrote, "She was unapologetically herself, speaking and singing her truth through joy and pain, triumph and tragedy." Now to the race to become the next U.S. president. Florida's governor made it official tonight. Ron DeSantis is taking on Donald Trump for the Republican nomination. And as Paul Hunter tells us, what's expected to be an ugly fight got off to a bit of a bizarre start.
This is insane. This is epic.
It's still pretty glitchy here.
Put generously, it was a less than perfect presidential campaign launch.
Yeah, I mean, so Governor DeSantis, are you there? Can you hear us? I think you're pretty. I'm here.
After more than 20 minutes of online silence, crackles, buzzing, and echo via Twitter Spaces with Twitter owner Elon Musk.
In fact, you can tell by the, some of the mistakes that it's real. So.
Finally came the announcement from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis that he's got what it takes.
Well, I am running for President of the United States to lead our great American comeback.
Long seen as the most serious challenger to Donald Trump for the Republican nomination, DeSantis is now in.
America has fallen.
We did it, Joe.
This is a new ad from his supporters.
Ron DeSantis served our nation.
But is it enough to take on the Republican frontrunner? DeSantis is betting a long list of his policies in Florida will win over Republican voters. He banned abortion after 6 weeks, eased gun laws, brought in the so-called Don't Say Gay law, and more.
We will never, ever surrender to the woke mob. Our state is where woke goes to die.
Trump has long had none of it.
Hey, there it is, Trump at 71. Ron DeSanctimonious at 10%.
And Trump backers have already signaled the kind of contest this will be. Consider this anti-DeSantis ad.
Ron DeSantis loves sticking his fingers where they don't belong. And we're not just talking about pudding.
Announcement glitches for DeSantis aside, the Republican frontrunners are now in place for a year-long campaign that few doubt will be divisive, ugly, and brutal. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Washington.
There's a stark warning tonight from Canada's housing agency. It says household debt in this country is now the highest in the G7. And as Nisha Patel tells us, that could put families and the entire economy at risk.
It's no secret that Canadians are feeling stretched.
I stopped going out and I don't even have Wi-Fi anymore.
I used to live in downtown, so I moved back home.
$41.70. Between the higher cost of living and higher interest rates meant to wrangle inflation, it appears many Canadians have racked up costly debt.
Half of my paycheck is going into paying off the credit card.
It's just ridiculous. Housing is too expensive, food is too expensive, childcare is too expensive.
Now, a warning from the National Housing Agency. Canadian households have the highest debt levels in the G7. If a recession or other unexpected crisis takes hold, the CMHC says families and the entire economy will be more vulnerable.
If people lose their jobs, they can't service their debt, their mortgage, and that leads to a major problem.
Canada's housing crisis is a central factor here. 3/4 of household debt is tied to mortgages. The CMHC says any attempt to address this looming problem should start with making housing more affordable.
Governments need to get together with the private sector to build more housing, get the supply side of housing working.
Still, it's also a call to Canadians to get their debt levels under control. But it's a difficult task for those who can barely afford the necessities.
If you've renewed your mortgage at any point in the last year, your housing costs are a lot higher, transportation is higher, so it's all of those expenses going up far faster than income.
This bankruptcy advisor says it's been his busiest month in years, a troubling trend that may be tough to turn around.
In a lot of cases, people don't have any choice. You can't just stop eating food because it went up in cost. So yes, we are in a crunch now.
A crunch that could get tighter when Canada's central bank makes its next interest rate announcement in just a few weeks. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
2 opposition leaders are rejecting an offer to review top-secret intelligence on foreign interference in Canadian politics. This one day after David Johnston said there's no need for a public inquiry. Evan Dyer shows us why those leaders are wary.
Public opinion polls going.
In Winnipeg, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau reiterated his offer to open the books to leaders of opposition parties.
We have offered to the leaders of all the parties in the House the capacity to get the security clearances necessary so that they can look at that raw intelligence themselves.
Intelligence that David Johnston used in his decision to resist calls for a public inquiry into foreign interference. Trudeau condemned leaders who declined to take up his offer.
We have a leader of the official opposition who doesn't even want to know the facts because they'll get in the way of a good partisan attack or argument.
But the leaders of the 2 biggest opposition parties both said they saw the offer as a trap because they'll be under oath to keep secret whatever they learn.
And then they will tell everybody that everything is fixed because the leaders of the opposition parties have seen something which they can do nothing about.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says there's no substitute for a public inquiry.
CSIS itself has said in its briefings to the Prime Minister and to the other members of the government that sunlight is the best disinfectant.
Both leaders said they will allow members of caucus who sit on the committees to hear the secret evidence, but won't attend themselves in order to preserve their freedom to speak.
It's too bad because I would like to see both leaders of those parties get as much information as they can.
Former Conservative Senator Vern White sat on the National Security Committee. He acknowledges that secrets come with strings attached.
Well, it does handcuff them because realistically they're being given that intelligence based on the fact that it'll be kept secret.
Opposition members who do get to see the intelligence already reviewed by David Johnston would be able to say they disagree with his conclusions, but they wouldn't be able to say why not. It could produce a situation much like today's, where the opposition is still demanding a public inquiry and the government is still unwilling to call one. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Ottawa.
Canada and Saudi Arabia are restoring relations after a 5-year diplomatic feud. Global Affairs Canada says talks between the Prime Minister and the Saudi Crown Prince began at a recent summit, culminating with the announcement of a new ambassador today. Saudi Arabia expelled Canada's ambassador in 2018. That move was viewed as retaliation after Ottawa criticized the kingdom's human rights record. Workers at a funeral home in Toronto are speaking out to CBC News about what they say is a worrying trend. They are repatriating the remains of more and more Indians who have come to this country to study. And as Kirthan Assasi-Theron tells us, some say it highlights a need for more support for international students.
For years, Kamal Bardwaj has been sending the remains of Indian students back to their home country and sees what he calls a troubling trend, a rise of deaths.
We're about 4 to 5 a month right now, currently as we stand, so it has gone up throughout the years.
Directors at the Lotus Funeral Home say they have seen an increase in the number of deaths, some caused by overdose or suicide. They have repatriated remains of students from Ontario, Manitoba, New Brunswick, and PEI.
Being as a parent, when I see how they died, the cause of death, that makes me upset by myself. Why this happening?
The funeral home says they repatriated 8 young Indian nationals in 2018. In 2022, it was 33. Citing privacy concerns, they wouldn't specify how many of those deaths are mental health related. Officially, it's hard to get a firm grip on how big of an issue this is. The Canadian government doesn't track it, and CBC didn't hear back from the Indian embassy in Ottawa. But here in Toronto, the Indian consulate tells me 25 students died last year in this province alone, almost a third from suicide. And by March of this year, 2 more suicides. More recent deaths remain under investigation. That's much higher than the national suicide rate.
They can't, stay upon the expectations of their families and friends. I mean, from South Asian perspective, it's a matter of life and death.
Staff at Punjabi Community Health Services offer supports for students.
A lot of it's been being homesick. A lot of these folks come from large families where somebody's checking in on them, asking them how their day was, things like that. And when they come here, a lot of them are alone.
Callan says the organization has intervened in the past, going so far as sending emotionally struggling students back to India to be with their families before it's too late.
The families were very thankful. They were able to understand what their child was going through.
Colleges Ontario is taking notice too. They say they will provide more information to international students on how they can access mental health support. Kirtan Asasi, CBC News, Toronto.
And if you're in need of support, help is available 24 hours a day by calling Talk Suicide Canada. So that number is 1-833-456-4566, or you can text 45645. New Brunswick is pushing ahead with a review into a school policy that's aimed at fostering inclusivity. The government says it's been getting hundreds of complaints about the policy. But as Jacques Poitras tells us, supporters of it insist it saves lives.
New Brunswick legislature.
An increasingly common sight in New Brunswick this month, high school students rallying against a review of a provincial policy that's aimed at protecting LGBTQ students in schools.
It could lead to kids not wanting to go to school and dropping out and things like that.
The policy sets what it calls minimum requirements for schools to provide a safe and inclusive environment supporting students who self-identify their gender. Emmanuel Jackson was president of a high school gender sexuality alliance when the policy was adopted in 2021.
The need for a safe space and comfort and just feeling like they can belong somewhere is very important to children's growth, and it's the nurture that they need.
The government says it received hundreds of complaints about the policy, so it's reviewing 3 elements. One lets kids use washrooms that align with their gender identities. Another lets them take part in activities, including sports teams, consistent with their gender identities. And a third lets students under 16 adopt new names and pronouns at school without their parents being told.
That's why we have parents. And to suggest that it's okay that parents don't need to know, let's just stop and think about that question.
The review has prompted rallies and online petitions to save the policy, though there are New Brunswickers who support the government.
I think it's wrong that they're trying to keep things from the parents, because the parents know what's best for the children. It's their child. They have the best interest for their children.
The Premier says he'll protect the safety and rights of all students. Some MLAs question whether his personal views are driving the review.
Are we trying to teach tolerance and acceptance, or are we trying to teach promotion?
Several members of the Premier's own caucus are now questioning the review. The Minister of Education said he wanted it done by next week, but now says it may take more time. Jacques Poitras, CBC News, Fredericton.
Tonight, in a conversation with The National, Michael J. Fox gets candid about enduring the biggest challenge in his life, Parkinson's disease.
What do you consider about mortality?
Well, just that this isn't an endless buffet.
Harry Forstell's intimate interview with the actor about living with the disease and his outlook on the future. India's government has sparked controversy in a bid to promote tourism. And remembering Tina Turner in her own words.
In my case, love has a lot to do with it. I'm sorry.
We're back in 2. Actor Michael J. Fox is one of the biggest stars Canada ever produced, but his stellar career was forever changed when he went public with his Parkinson's disease. Decades later, his struggle has only grown. Tonight, you may have to lean in a bit sometimes to catch what he's saying, but you'll want to hear every word of this raw exchange with Harry Forrestal. He and Fox share a certain bond, as you're about to see.
New York City is no easy place for the weak or the infirm. It's busy, it's brash, and it's crowded, especially for someone like me living with Parkinson's. It's an incurable movement disorder that leaves me constantly at risk of tripping over my own feet or even of a bone-breaking fall. But it's a risk I'm willing to take, because I'm here today to meet someone who knows more than most about the ravages of Parkinson's disease. A Canadian cultural icon whose determination to meet inevitability head-on is at once both futile and deeply inspiring. Someone who can grasp the future by the throat, even though, as he freely admits, his future is rapidly diminishing.
All right, this is an oldie, but well, it's an oldie where I come from. All right, guys, listen, this is a blues riff and B. Watch me for the changes and try and keep up, okay?
There was a time when the name Michael J. Fox conjured up images of a boundless future. A boyish whirlwind from Canada, brimming with comic talent, always on the move and keen to carve out that future in the land of make-believe.
Are you telling me that you built a time machine? Out of a DeLorean?
With a string of hit movies to his name, an era-defining television sitcom.
Sorry, I had to answer the door myself. Our butler's off tonight.
And a talented partner in Family Ties co-star Tracy Pollan.
Do you mind if I wait around here for a while?
Yeah, I suppose.
Michael J. Fox had it all. Still in his 20s, he was on top of the world. But then something happened.
Michael J. Fox, one of America's best-loved actors, has decided to publicly announce that he's been battling Parkinson's
world
disease.
when he announced he has been battling Parkinson's disease
and has had it for 7 years.
Reality intruded in the form of Parkinson's disease. And after several years of hiding it from the world, Fox could no longer keep his tremors a secret.
Michael, all this week we have been hearing that you have this devastating disease, that it is life-threatening, that you are in the fight for your life.
When you see that, just kind of hum Paradise City in your mind.
It was a pivotal moment for Michael J. Fox. A weight lifted.
Oh, Jesus Christ! What the hell? Parkinson's.
He began embracing roles on screen portraying characters with Parkinson's. And not long after, Fox began to transition from actor to activist.
What did it mean to be still?
I wouldn't know I was ever still.
It's an inspirational story, now captured in the new feature documentary, Still, a Michael J. Fox movie.
I woke up and I noticed my pinky. Auto-animated. Parkinson's disease.
For the past 30 years, Michael J. Fox has fought tirelessly against the advancing inevitability of Parkinson's. So what does a man who has everything do when it's suddenly all swept away, when fate deals him a losing hand? I'm about to find out.
Action, Michael!
Michael!
Tracy, great!
I'm not sure whether the shaking is the consequence of Parkinson's or being nervous around you. You know, you and I have a couple of things in common. We're both Canadian. There's only a month that celebrates our births. I think I'm a month older than you. I know you're probably a Rangers fan, but that's okay, because we can't all cheer for the Habs, can we?
Toronto, it's just sad. It's just tragic.
Yeah. The other thing we share in common, of course, is Parkinson's. And, you know, you released this feature documentary, and I'm curious, it's very affecting and very revealing, and presents you as very vulnerable, too. Was that the intention?
Well, I'm not so much vulnerable, not glib and not
It's very honest.
Yeah, just straightforward. The story of me. Take two.
Everyone talks now about owning their narrative. So the sad sack story is Michael J. Fox gets this debilitating disease and it crushes him.
Yeah, that's boring. David Guggenheim, the filmmaker, who is quite a record, an Academy Award for the Al Gore thing.
Yeah.
He did a thing. There's one question I really liked, and I was talking about the period when I quit drinking. That the first couple of years of sobriety were like a knife fight in a closet. It's dark, it's scary, it's sharp, there's blood let. You don't know where you are. You know you're upside down, right side up. And he said, "What was a knife?" And it just occurred to me, the truth was a knife.
At that point, did you realize you were drinking to deal with the diagnosis, or were you drinking to deal with how you were coping?
Well, I was a Burnaby boy. I was drinking because it was Friday night, and Saturday night, and Sunday night, and Monday and Tuesday was coming, and Wednesday was around the corner. I just like to party. But then what happened was when I got diagnosed, it turned nasty. It wasn't about fun anymore. It was about exiting from the situation, exiting from relationships, exiting from responsibility, and so and Tracy's response was a big dose of apathy on her part. It just like boredom, and nothing is as complimentary as disgust. She was just done, and that shocked me into action.
There's a tendency for people to deny they have Parkinson's, to deny the effect it has on them. I hid mine for 3 years until my daughter outed me with an essay that ended up appearing on your foundation's website. So I got outed that way. You hid your diagnosis for 7 years. And I'm curious about the effect that had on your growth and on your relationship with your wife, Tracy.
Well, initially it was terrible. So I kept the teaching for 7 years. Over the period of that 7 years, I got sober. We had more children. I grew fuller in my understanding of what it was I was dealing with, and coming to grips with like one doctor said to me, "You don't win this, you lose."
Right. Yeah.
And I like to win. I like to. I don't like to waste my time with stuff. I like to go after it, and so that was the dilemma I faced, was that I was gonna, if I really learned from this, I was gonna learn how to lose well. One of the things the doctor said to me too early on was that I had 10 years left to work. And he said, "Well, the good thing is you have 10 years left to work." I was 29 years old, and a lot of expensive real estate.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And so I started to work, and well, I worked a lot. And one of the things that I came to over time was that I didn't need to do that, and that I wanted to be with my family, and I needed to look at things that I wasn't gonna let, the big thing I learned, I wasn't gonna let Parkinson's drive the bus. You know, I can't on the bus. I wasn't gonna let Parkinson's drive the bus. So I had to learn how to deal with all that stuff.
After coming out to the world with his secret, Michael J. Fox became the unusually youthful face of Parkinson's disease.
Actor Michael J. Fox testified before Congress asking for an increase in research funding for Parkinson's disease.
I'm here to tell you that administering a successful research program is not rocket science. It's mostly common sense and the will to get things done. Thank you.
Mike. With the help of some high-profile friends, he began focusing his energies on raising awareness about the debilitating neurological condition.
I left Spin City for a new job, finding a cure for Parkinson's disease.
Fox established his own foundation to raise money for research. But over the years, the realities of living with Parkinson's began to take their toll.
Careful with this right hand.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Good, have a seat.
Okay.
You sure?
Yeah. This is right hand.
Right. See, the core's still there. Those are obliques.
Yeah.
Right? How you feeling?
Okay.
The fight now is between Fox and the condition that was slowly eroding his independence and his very life. You know, I remember an executive producer saying to me once, slow down, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And my response was, yeah, that's fine, but I'm a sprinter. and that was good, but eventually I had to own up to the challenge that was Parkinson's. And I can't sprint anymore. So he was right, it was a marathon.
It's hard to grasp that. It's really funny, I can't dance to save my life, but I'm one of the best dancers I know.
Yeah.
But I always could dance in the sense that I could move across the room in a really kind of balletic way.
Yeah.
And when I lost that, it was hugely painful. And it's like skating was really hard to get up skating. And I don't want to fall down. I've broken almost every body in my northern hemisphere.
Yeah.
Every bone in my head broke. This I broke. This place I broke. This I broke. This I broke.
Gee, yeah. You're the evil Knievel of Parkinson's.
Yeah. and they said, you know, don't slow down, right? I said, I'm not doing this on purpose. It's to be careful. I'm not being careful. I have this illness, this condition that doesn't recognize authority.
There are some amazingly vulnerable moments in the film, though. And the one I actually had to stop and, in a sense, recover my composure when that long shot of you walking outside with your physiotherapist, and you turn, someone is walking by and says, "Hi, Michael Fox," and you turn to say hi, and you fall.
That happened. All right, I'm okay. Thank you.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Nice to meet you. You knocked me off my feet.
In a heap on the sidewalk, your shoes come off, and yet you still manage to crack a joke to put that person at ease. Where does that come from? To put you at ease?
This is who I am. That's just humor is a big part of my vernacular. It's a big part. It's how I communicate. I always look at any chance to say what's funny, and nothing I did in this movie, nothing I do in my life, is for a fact. I'm too old. I'm too tired. I can't do it. I can't make shit up. So big. But if it's real, and then this is the easiest thing to do. And I really like people, and I think we can figure a lot of stuff out if we just good to each other, and it has to be genuine from the heart and from and of the moment, and that gets me through a lot of Parkinson's moments, because I'm not worried about some constructed apparatus of self-comfort. I'm just living beat by beat.
Coming up, how Michael J. Fox is helping to unlock the secrets of this debilitating disease. It's a huge, huge development, and one you must be justifiably proud of. And we'll talk to Fox about what the future holds and why his Canadian connections are so important to him.
The tremendous bond I feel with Canadians. And I mean, I've done nothing to earn that.
Since becoming the public face of Parkinson's, Michael J. Fox has led the charge in the race to better understand the disease and ultimately to find a cure. In the last 2 decades, the Michael J. Fox Foundation has raised more than $1.5 billion for research and recently established an important breakthrough.
A medical discovery that could be a game changer for tens of thousands of people who are diagnosed with Parkinson's disease.
A test that can detect a key biomarker for the disease, a step that could eventually determine who is at risk of Parkinson's. It's a crucial development, but there is much work left to be done.
One of the things that really was exciting, and it coincided with when about 10 years in we got into this PPMI thing, we were finding a biomarker, and which is near impossible. I mean, it's literally a needle in a haystack, or a gene in a brain. But yeah, wherever genes live, again, I plead ignorance.
It's a huge, huge development, and one you must be justifiably proud of.
Well, I say I'm proud of it. I'm proud of the people that go up here. I'm happy that I was a part of getting them the material they needed and the people they needed. But what I'm most proud of, because of a decision I made 20-something years ago.
Yeah.
There's a lady who goes to the supermarket now and doesn't worry about like fumbling in her purse or change or being judged. But because someone can go, man, that's what Michael Fox has. It gives her a little bit of space. And so for that little bit of elbow room that I've given her, I'm tremendously proud.
Good.
Okay. I just want to feel better.
Yeah.
And it seems to me I can see more clearly the things I need to do to feel better. But it's this Michael J. Fox stuff. People express to me that I make them feel better, I make them do things they might not otherwise do. And that's the most powerful thing you could ever feel, and it's a huge responsibility. And I don't want to f it up.
Right. It's okay not to be Michael J. Fox sometimes.
You've taken every stage that's been thrown at you and made as much as anyone could make of it. And that's a credit to you,
That's
right?
a gift.
That's a credit to you and the support Tracy's given you and your family.
She has this disease too, in a sense, as I do,
Yeah.
and so much of her life. Right from the beginning, before any of this happened, I took this young actress whose career was hopping. She was doing great. She was beautiful, and I made her a single mother. I took her out of the game, and I always felt bad about that. And now here I was doing it again with Parkinson's, kind of superimposing an agenda and a trial on her that wasn't hers to endure.
Right now, what does your future hold for you?
Well, I think the future, and I love pointing around that. Future is the first thing and the last thing we run out of.
Yeah, yeah.
Future to me is a space reserved to accomplish what you have accomplished yet, but want to. And that space remains reserved until you don't have it anymore.
Mm.
And then you don't worry about it. Like, you'll know when it's time not to worry about it anymore. Or you won't know, which is probably better. And I'm nowhere near that. The very fact that I'm doing this movie, and the fact that my little story, whether it's the tremendous bond I feel with Canadians. And I mean, I've done nothing to earn that. But that's, I mean, so many letters I get, like, fellow Canadian. We're so proud. And I mean, it's tremendous. And like, it was a gift. It was one of many gifts, but that jumps out at me because all these things like hockey and pancakes.
And maple syrup.
And skiing and Rush. It's cool stuff. Burton Cummings. I mean, it's like Canadian stuff that's our stuff. And I'm glad I'm still in the club.
Well, listen, I want to thank you so much for your battle, your fight, for all of us. And I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. It's been a real pleasure.
You look terrific, man. It was really good.
Awesome.
You're looking good to have the battle. Thank you,
Thanks,
Mike.
Michael.
Harry, we're also glad you did that interview, and I'm so curious, as you leave your time with Michael J. Fox, as you walk away from that interview, how does that leave you feeling about your own experiences with Parkinson's?
Well, frankly, Adrian, it was a bit intimidating, and that isn't because of who Michael J. Fox is. It's because of the determination and focus he brings to facing that disease. After 30 years of fighting Parkinson's, it's hard to look at Michael J. Fox and not think to yourself, do I have that kind of courage? But it's also reassuring, I think, because as he says in that interview, if I've learned anything through all of this, it's how to lose well. And by losing well, he doesn't mean surrendering, not by a long shot. He means mustering all the energy, all the skill, and all the talents he has to face and refocus on a new adversary. And of course, that is Parkinson's. Adrienne?
Harry, we're all so grateful. Thank you.
Take care.
Next, India says Kashmir is open for tourism, but residents say they are living under a cloud of conflict. Next. Tonight, CBC News has rare access inside a region often forgotten by the world because of a long, ongoing conflict. Kashmir is the disputed region between India and Pakistan. Both countries have laid a claim to the region, fighting over it since partition in the late 1940s. Well, this week, India is hosting a controversial G20 event there, an event being used to showcase normalcy in a state where residents say there is anything but. South Asia correspondent Salima Shivji is the only Canadian journalist inside the territory.
In the heart of the Kashmir Valley, the views are unparalleled, as is the security. A G20 summit on tourism held under the tightest of conditions, in disputed territory. For India, it's an irresistible opportunity to talk tourism. Delegates from around the world hearing that more than 18 million tourists flocked to the region last year, a high for an area plagued by decades of insurgency against Indian rule. India is keen to project Kashmir as stable, peaceful, ready for development.
This is the first high-level international meeting in Kashmir since India abruptly revoked its special status in 2019, folding its section of the Muslim-majority region into a federal territory under New Delhi's direct rule. Both India and Pakistan claim Kashmir in full, but only control parts of it.
I welcome you all to
China and Saudi Arabia may have boycotted and Pakistan stewed over the summit and its location, but India took pains to defend it.
Jammu Kashmir has moved on, and I would say the common man walking on the streets of Srinagar wants to be a part of the development journey led by Prime Minister Modi.
But at this local market, there's unease and despair. Many in Srinagar are bristling at the increased checkpoints.
If there is normalcy in Jammu and Kashmir, what makes you to create this much of huge burden, huge amount of security personnel to deploy in this state? There is a contradiction.
Inside, the market is virtually empty. Manzoor Ahmed blames that on the heavily armed soldiers patrolling the streets. Kashmiris are fearful. They're not leaving the house and it's hurting our businesses, he says. Outside, the anger is palpable. Are people afraid to talk about what life is like here, I ask? Barabar. That's right, they say. We are living in fear, this man says. The security forces are everywhere. Every Kashmiri is depressed. Even as I speak with you, he tells me, I'm scared that they might be watching and will harass me later. There is no peace. The G20 campaign is just a facade. It's one version of life here projected to the world. A beautiful setting in a restive Kashmir that simmers quietly. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Srinagar.
Well, the world saw her as the queen of rock and roll, but how did she see herself?
I think I'm a very normal person off stage, I think. I still like to stay with my feet on the ground.
Tina Turner, in her own words, next. Well, over the course of her iconic career, many things were said about Tina Turner. She's been called an icon and a role model. But to truly understand the woman, you have to listen to her. So tonight, we leave you with Tina Turner in her own words.
I think love has everything to do with everything.
What's love got to do with it?
In my case, love has a lot to do with it. I'm sorry.
I love you, baby, like a flower loves the spring.
That's my style. I take great songs and turn them into rock and roll songs on stage. Ike was very good to me when I first started my career. I had had a lot of violence. Houses burned, cars shot into. It was self-acceptance, because for such a long time I hadn't liked myself. Hiding all of that ugliness and then finding a release on stage and getting there and just blurting it all out. The calls you make this lifetime can be the effect of a better life the next lifetime.
All of Tina Turner's albums on repeat all night. That is a prescription, and that is a national for May the 24th. Thank you for being with us. Have a good night.